Trevor is a divorced man living alone in a small house in Hertfordshire. He eagerly awaits the arrival of his daughter, Maddie, and his ex-wife, Jess, for Christmas. He has even bought them presents. But Jess calls to tell him that her boyfriend has invited her and Maddie to his villa in Barbados, so they won't be able to come for Christmas. She promises they will meet for New Year instead. Trevor reluctantly agrees. Jess then tells him that her boyfriend has also offered to cover Maddie's college tuition fees, so Trevor doesn't need to worry about it. Wanting to maintain his pride, Trevor lies and says he already has the money and can pay for it himself. At that moment, a postman hands Trevor a letter. It's a reminder of his unpaid bills. He leaves a voice note for Maddie, telling her he hopes she has an amazing time in Barbados, and that he'll miss her. Trevor then heads to St. Aldwyn Primary School, where he works as a caretaker. He begins helping the teacher, Diana, prepare for the school's Christmas nativity play. As he works, the principal stops him and says she'd like a quick chat. But Diana rushes in to mention that one of their students' mothers, June, has agreed to bring her 8-month-old baby to play baby Jesus in the nativity. The principal smiles. In the staff room, the principal pours him a cup of wine and thanks him for his service, reminding him that today is his last day at the school. When she asks how long he's worked here, Trevor answers, 7 months, she replies. It feels like years. The backroom bell rings. Trevor opens the door and finds a baby in a carrier. He looks around for the mother, June, but she's nowhere to be seen. With no other option, he takes the baby inside and settles him in the manger prop. The play begins, and Trevor manages things backstage. While working, he checks the tuition fees for the college Maddie wants to attend, £9,000. His phone rings. The caller introduces himself as Caesar from the HR department of Grupo del Sanchez Romero, the new parent company of House Sitter Deluxe, where Trevor previously worked. Caesar explains that he saw Trevor's profile on the employee portal and is calling because their employee assigned to a premium house-sitting job in London has cancelled at the last minute. He asks if Trevor can fill in over Christmas. Trevor says he's not interested. Then Caesar mentions the job pays £10,000, and Trevor is so startled he drops a star prop onto the stage mid-performance. Trevor quickly agrees. Caesar tells him there will be an interview at the house this evening at 5 p.m. As Trevor locks up the school, he hears a baby crying. He follows the sound and finds the same baby again. He searches for June's phone number and calls her, but it goes to voicemail, so he leaves a message. He decides to bring the baby to June's home, but when she answers the door, she tells him her baby actually has a cold, so she never dropped him off at the school. Frustrated, Trevor calls the principal to explain the situation. The principal simply replies that she'll send a message to the parents' WhatsApp group and ends the call. Trevor then calls the police and reports that someone has left a baby at his school. The officer who picks up tells him they'll get back to him in 3 to 4 hours, blaming the delay on the harsh weather. Trevor explains he has to be in London by 5 p.m., so the officer advises him to call Child Services, who can get to him more quickly. Trevor calls them, and an agent agrees to pick up the baby from his house. Trevor gives him his address and starts packing for London. The social services agent arrives shortly afterward, but when Trevor turns to hand over the baby, he realizes the baby is gone. Panicked, he searches the entire house, calling out, "Baby Jesus!" The agent, thinking Trevor has lost his mind, tells him to contact him when he finds the baby, then leaves his card and walks out. Trevor eventually hears the baby cooing and finds him, but it's already too late. He tries calling the agent's number, but it goes to voicemail. Desperate, he drives to the social services office, but it's closed for Christmas. As a last resort, he calls the police again, but the reception is terrible. His phone dies mid-call, and the police manage to catch only his last name. Out of options, Trevor decides to take the baby to London with him. He finally arrives at the house-sitting location. He rings the intercom and quickly hides the baby. Trevor introduces himself. The woman on the speaker tells him she'll be right down. Before she comes down, he slips the baby into his backpack. The woman introduces herself as Petra, the executive concierge for the Schwarzenbach family. She explains that their housekeeper, Janet, would normally be here, but she had to leave for a last-minute family emergency. Trevor nods and slowly walks backwards so Petra won't see the baby hidden in his bag. Inside the elevator, Petra hands him a small fob and explains that it's used to access the penthouse level, while other floors don't require one. As they go up, the baby lets out a soft coo, and Trevor awkwardly imitates the sound to make it seem like it came from him. When they reach the penthouse, Petra explains that this is the London residence of the Schwarzenbach family, who haven't spent Christmas here in nearly 10 years. The baby begins to whimper, so Trevor gently tiptoes in place to calm him. Petra assumes Trevor is simply an odd man. She tells him to put his bag down so she can show him around the apartment. Trevor carefully backs away and places the bag outside the door. Then he rejoins Petra as she starts listing the rooms in the penthouse. He follows her with no idea what she's talking about. Out of the corner of his eye, he spots the baby crawling across the hallway. He's escaped the bag. Petra continues explaining the rules of the house and mentions that he absolutely must not have any guests. Trevor nods stiffly. As Petra continues her tour, Trevor panics and grabs the baby's bottle, hiding it inside a decorative pot. The bottle clatters loudly. Petra pauses. Trevor nervously comments on what a very nice pot it is. He resumes searching for the baby as discreetly as possible. He hears a soft coo and finds him again, just as Petra calls his name. Trevor scoops up the baby and quickly places him inside an empty storage bin. Petra continues talking, now explaining where the kitchen utensils are kept. Trevor follows her into the living room. Petra asks if he has any questions. Trevor nods and asks whether he has gotten the job. Petra confirms that he has. She warns him not to lose the fob because it is the only one, aside from the copy held by the cleaning lady, Elsa. He hands him her business card. Trevor then asks if anyone will be coming to the penthouse for Christmas. Petra replies no, all the staff are on holiday, and adds that if the Schwarzenbach family were to show up unexpectedly, she would be in serious trouble. Once Petra leaves, Trevor immediately charges his phone. Curious, he picks up a remote control and presses a button. Outside, a large decorative statue begins to move. He then hears the baby crying and retrieves him from the storage bin. His phone starts ringing again, so he hands the baby a random object to play with while he answers. It's the Hertfordshire police. Trevor explains that he is currently in London. The officer says that London is outside their jurisdiction and that they will inform the Metropolitan Police. Trevor removes the baby from his makeshift hiding spot and is hit with a terrible smell. Realizing the baby needs a nappy change, he searches the penthouse for something he can use. In the master bedroom, he finds a collection of silk scarves and decides to improvise a diaper using those and some clips he finds in a drawer. The baby then grows fussy again. He's hungry. Trevor retrieves the bottle he hid in the pot and feeds him, but the baby finishes it quickly. With no other supplies, Trevor heads to a nearby supermarket and grabs a selection of baby food and milk. As he leaves, his phone rings. The caller identifies herself as Georgia from Westminster Social Services, explains that the police forwarded Trevor's report. Trevor asks what time she'll be coming to collect the baby. Georgia replies, "Tomorrow. You're extremely busy at the moment." Trevor sighs, disappointed. He returns to the penthouse, and Trevor tries feeding the baby, but the child isn't interested. Then Trevor smells a foul odor. Time for another nappy change. The baby yawns. So Trevor settles him to sleep, then lies down himself. Around midnight, the baby begins crying again. Trevor tries rocking him, patting him, humming. Nothing works. After a long stretch of wailing, the baby finally burps and gives Trevor a big smile. Trevor gently places him back in the basket, but the moment he steps away, the baby starts crying again. Desperate, Trevor uses a wine cork as a makeshift pacifier. The next morning, Trevor notices he has only one scarf left. He decides to order proper nappies immediately. A few minutes later, the delivery man arrives. Trevor fumbles with the intercom, unable to figure it out, and the delivery man leaves. Trevor rushes down in the lift and catches him outside, explaining that he is the one who placed the order. After collecting the nappies, Trevor steps back into the elevator, only to realize he left the fob upstairs. Meanwhile, the baby, still inside the penthouse, begins climbing the stairs. Panicking, Trevor goes to the main desk and pulls out the employee record books for the building. He searches until he finds the name Elsa, the cleaner, who also has a fob. Trevor reaches into his pocket to call her, but his phone is in the penthouse. At that moment, a resident enters the lobby. Trevor introduces himself, explaining he's house-sitting for the Schwarzenbach family. The man barely reacts. Trevor then asks if he could borrow his phone for an emergency call. Reluctantly, the man hands it over. Trevor phones Elsa and explains the situation. Elsa says she'll need Petra's permission first, and if Petra approves, she'll bring the fob. Trevor agrees. Trevor returns the phone to the resident and tells him he is waiting for a callback. With a sigh, the man tells Trevor he might as well come upstairs and wait in his apartment. He introduces himself as Lionel. Trevor waits anxiously for the phone to ring. Lionel tells him he dislikes Mr. Schwarzenbach. 3 years ago, he bought the entire building, and ever since, he's been forcing the long-term residents out. Tomorrow will be Lionel's last day in the building. After what feels like an hour, Elsa finally calls to say Petra approved it, and she's on her way. Meanwhile, Georgia from Social Services arrives at the penthouse door and calls Trevor, but he doesn't answer. She leaves, asking him to call back when he's available. Inside, the baby has climbed all the way to the top of the staircase. 30 minutes later, Elsa arrives and unlocks the penthouse level for Trevor. Just as the elevator doors begin to close, Trevor notices the pack of nappies lying outside. He wedges his shoe into the door to stop it and quickly grabs the nappies, just as the door crushes his shoe and snaps shut. He runs outside to find Elsa again, then finally manages to get back into the penthouse. As he steps inside, the baby suddenly shoots out of the laundry chute, and Trevor catches him just in time. That night, Trevor leaves Georgia a voicemail apologizing for missing her earlier call and asking when she'll be available to pick up the baby. Just as he's about to fall asleep, his phone rings. It's Maddie. Trevor asks if she's calling from Barbados, but she explains their flight was delayed. She tells him she misses him. Trevor tells her he misses her too. Later that night, Trevor hears a strange noise downstairs and goes to investigate. He finds a couple rummaging through the kitchen. Trevor asks how they got in. The woman explains that they found a fob in the basement. She admits they have been living down there ever since their apartment was repossessed and only came up to get some food. As they begin to leave, Trevor stops them and admits he also has a baby with him. A baby that isn't his. He hands them some of the baby food he bought. The next morning, Trevor wakes to the baby crying. As he feeds him, he receives a call from Georgia, who tells him she'll be able to collect the baby that afternoon. Trevor then notices his missing shoe, so he improvises by wearing a plastic bag on one foot. While taking a stroll with the baby, he passes a group of mothers and greets them. They immediately fawn over the baby and ask how old he is. Trevor hesitates, then blurts out, 3 months. One woman raises an eyebrow. He's huge for 3 months. Trevor replies, you should see his mother. After an awkward silence, he quickly walks away. Suddenly, Trevor spots his actual shoe lying in the middle of the street. Grateful for his luck, he hurries over and slips it on, only for a dog to clamp down on it and refuse to let go. Trevor throws a stick to distract the dog, but it doesn't work. Finally, in desperation, Trevor takes off his remaining shoe and tosses it. As it turns out, the dog belongs to one of the building's residents. Later, the couple from the basement visit the penthouse to thank Trevor for sharing the baby food the night before. As a gesture of gratitude, they gift him a small knitted hat for his baby. They explain that they need to leave for a housing office interview, and if everything goes well, they might finally get a house. Trevor offers to watch their baby while they're gone, and they gratefully accept. Trevor takes care of both babies. After feeding them, he settles each one into a separate basket. An hour later, Georgia arrives at the penthouse. Trevor grabs a basket and hands her the baby. Georgia takes a picture for the records and asks him to sign a form. After escorting Georgia out, Trevor sees the couple return, hopeful and excited. They believe they'll soon have a home. Trevor hands their baby back to them, but they look at him in horror and say, "That's not our baby." Trevor panics and bolts downstairs to catch Georgia. Luckily, she hasn't left and is arguing with a police officer about a parking ticket. Trevor calls out to her repeatedly, but she doesn't hear him. In desperation, he grabs the baby from her car and asks the officer to tell Georgia to wait while he retrieves the right baby. Trevor rushes back upstairs but loses his fob along the way. Then he remembers. The couple gave him a spare copy earlier. He returns their real baby to them. They ask where he sent their child. Trevor, breathless, admits, "I tried to give him to social services." He races back to the parking area, but Georgia has already driven off. He calls her, but the call goes to voicemail. Then another call comes in. It's Petra. In a panic, she tells him the Schwarzenbachs are coming to London for Christmas. She explains that she's currently in Thailand but managed to reach Janet, the housekeeper who lives nearby, and has agreed to handle the preparations. Petra informs Trevor that once Janet arrives, he is dismissed, with full pay. Minutes later, Trevor receives a call from Janet. She confesses that she is actually in Scotland on vacation and lied to Petra. She promises she will catch a train and be there tonight. She also asks Trevor for a favor. There's a credit card in the kitchen office drawer, and she needs him to start shopping for Christmas supplies. Meanwhile, Georgia realizes the baby she collected is missing. Horrified, she immediately calls the police to report the situation. At the supermarket, Trevor loads his cart with various foods, condiments, and treats for the massive Christmas feast he's now responsible for preparing. About an hour later, Trevor finishes his shopping. He tries calling Georgia again, but she still doesn't pick up. He heads down to the basement and gives the couple some chocolate and a bottle of wine as a Christmas gesture. They thank him warmly. Then Trevor notices his missing shoe sitting on a counter. Delighted, he slips it on, only for the same dog to spot the shoe and run straight into the elevator after it. Trevor tells the woman he'll return the dog soon, but when he reaches the ground floor, the woman is gone. He writes his phone number on a piece of paper and tapes it beside the elevator. Trevor takes the dog with him back to the penthouse, but the dog immediately begins causing chaos. To distract him from chewing through the groceries, Trevor uses the fob to lure him away, but the dog ends up swallowing it. Trevor scoops the dog up and checks the elevator panel. Thankfully, the fob still works. Just then, his phone rings. It's Janet, explaining that all the trains were fully booked, so she bought a ticket on an overnight sleeper. She asks him for another favor, to decorate the Christmas tree. She tells him she'll arrange for someone to deliver it, thanks him, and hangs up. Next, Trevor receives a call from the dog's owner, who introduces herself as Annabelle. Trevor explains that he isn't at the penthouse at the moment. Annabelle asks when he'll be back. Trevor thinks for a moment and says, maybe 2 or 3 hours? An hour later, the Christmas tree is delivered to the penthouse. Trevor comes up with a clever way to assemble and decorate it with lights. Then he takes the dog for a walk, and the dog finally poops. Trevor finds a poop bag on the dog's collar and uses it. When the elevator doors open, Annabelle is waiting. She smiles at her dog and asks, "Did you do your business?" Trevor shows her the bag. She thanks him. She asks if he's heading up. Trevor nods and presses the penthouse button using the poop bag. Then Annabelle gets off at her floor. The next morning, Janet calls again. She tells Trevor she won't make it after all, so he'll have to prepare the Christmas feast himself. She says there will be 12 or 13 people attending and sends him all the recipe instructions. Trevor begins cooking, moving through the elaborate feast surprisingly smoothly. At last, he finishes the entire dinner. He waits by the elevator as evening sets in. Hours pass. Trevor calls Janet, but she doesn't pick up. So he calls Petra to ask when the Schwarzenbach family will arrive, mentioning that Janet prepared the feast. However, Petra tells him the family has decided not to come, and admits she forgot to tell Janet. She asks Trevor to pass along her apology, then hangs up. Moments later, the intercom buzzes. It's the police, asking if he has a missing baby, since the child was last seen in his possession. Trevor says yes and brings the baby downstairs. But when the officer compares the baby to the photo Georgia took, they don't match. Trevor explains the whole situation. The officer, bewildered, lets Trevor bring him back upstairs to wait while Georgia arrives. Trevor feeds the baby and pours the officer a glass of wine. Then the intercom buzzes again. It's the couple from the basement, bringing Trevor a Christmas present. He invites them to stay for dinner. Another buzz. This time it's Lionel, who says Petra asked him to bring Trevor his apartment key since he is moving out. When Trevor buzzes him in, Annabelle steps out of the elevator with him. Apparently, she was on her way to the 3rd floor when Trevor buzzed Lionel up. Trevor invites Lionel and Annabelle to stay for dinner as well. Then Trevor's phone rings. It's Jess. She tells him they missed their connecting flight because of the earlier delay. Trevor tells her and Maddie to come to the penthouse. He even buzzes Georgia as well. The penthouse soon fills with a lively Christmas atmosphere. Guests filter in, laughter echoes through the rooms, and the table glows with the feast Trevor has prepared. Eventually, Jess and Maddie arrive at the penthouse, amazed by the sight. Everyone gathers around the table and sits down for dinner. Moments later, the police officer raises his glass and gives a Christmas toast to Trevor and to the baby who, in a strange way, brought them all together. But suddenly they notice the baby is missing. A frantic search breaks out. Finally, they find him in the manger display, lying peacefully beneath the baby Jesus decoration. Just then, the intercom buzzes. Trevor answers it and freezes. It's the Schwarzenbach family.